I'm going to introduce you because I think everybody here knows you, but you know, just in case, I'm going to do a little bio of Faith Burkowski, and then we're going to have a discussion. I'm going to ask Faith some questions, and we'll get going. So Faith Burkowski is the founder of High Five Literacy and Academic Coaching, with over 30 years as a classroom teacher, reading and learning specialist, regional literacy coach, administrator, and tutor. Faith is Orton Gillingham trained and a Wilson certified dyslexia practitioner. Faith is the author of the award-winning book, Failing Students or Failing Schools, A Parent's Guide to Reading, Instruction, and Intervention, Reading Intervention Behind School Walls, Why Your Child Continues to Struggle, and a series of graphic plays entitled If Only I Would Have Known What I Wish My Pediatrician, Preschool Teacher, and Librarian Told Me About Language Literacy and Dyslexia. And she is also one of our board members. And if you saw me falter for a second, it was because I was about to open your book, but I have all these stickies and highlights in it. And this was actually from before we really started working together, and I had read your book, and you know, before we begin with some of these hard questions, and I think a lot of parents watching feel the same way, your book is like gospel. There's a couple of books that once you start, if as a parent in this world, when you have a child that's struggling and you're groping around and you're starting to get little glints of information and figure things out, suddenly things hit you like gospel, like, oh my gosh, somebody is getting it. Like, I'm not alone, and there's somebody else out there, and she's writing about this. And I mean, on some level, there was this Sally Shaywitz dyslexia book when you start learning, but when you talk about the journey and the full picture, as a parent, it was your book. And so I actually, you know, before we became friends, and people probably think this is contrived, but it isn't. I mean, this book was marked up. And today when you said, did you ever, you know, have you been highlighting my book, or, you know, did you see any connections between the article you recently wrote in the book? I had already highlighted your book way back when, so I just had to put little stickies in it in case there was a specific quote I wanted to pull out. So I just want to bring that up because I think your book doesn't always get, you know, everybody has heard of this book, but I don't know that especially if somebody isn't a parent, that they understand how meaningful your book is to us, that we hang on these words because you get it. You know what we're going through, and you're just like you and I have had parallel journeys from your teacher perspective and me as a parent, and kind of stumbling in from an educational publishing perspective. You know, you just find somebody who's on that same path but was actually in the system, and they're writing about it, and they're giving suggestions, and they're starting to put it together for you. It's very meaningful. So, you know, I think that it's important to just bring that up about your book before we launch into these questions that, you know, even that delve from the recent article that, that you wrote, that you've got just decades of vast experience in so many aspects of this world, and yet you've converged with us as parents. And I think that's what makes you, makes you unique in this space. One thing that makes you unique. So with that, I'm going to get right into my first question, and that is, the title of your article, Time to Burn the Boat, is quite graphic. Why did you choose that title, and what is it that you're trying to accomplish?
Right, so the story of Burn the Boats really goes back to the Vikings. And when the Vikings would land somewhere to attack, before they would go into battle, they would burn their boats, and you would see a blaze in the ocean. Why did they do this? Two reasons. They were letting their enemy know that they're committed, and it also reinforced their own commitment to what they were doing, because they had to know there was no safety net anymore. If they burn their boats, then they have to play to win, right? Unless they die. You go in wanting to win. You don't go in part way. You don't go in and say, ooh, this is scary, I'm turning around and going back. That's the game we've been playing for 30 years or more, where we go in and we bring science, the science of reading, to schools. And then there's this dance, really. It's like a dance. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, you know, we'll take that research, we'll use it. But there's never this full commitment. At least that's how it's gone down. And, you know, history repeats itself. So having been in this, not just an observer from the outside, in the trenches, as a teacher, as a reading specialist, as a regional reading coach, which means I wasn't just a building reading coach. I went to multiple school districts, training, modeling lessons, co-teaching, and then also as an administrator, and now I do private tutoring as well, and have done that in the past too. That I could tell you from multiple experiences I've had that we never fully commit to this. There's always this turning around. And so we make people think that we're doing this, but in the end, we never do it the right way. And so I've been vocal about this. You had said, so what do you want to accomplish by this? By putting this article out, which by the way was written months before it went out. So this was written in the earlier part of the year. By April, it was done. So, you know, I did this because I was prepared for this time of the year, trying to take all these experiences and what I'm watching going on with the big three, right? The Teachers College, Reading and Writing, Fontes and Pinnell, Guided Reading, Reading Recovery. And I looked at all this and I said, this is happening again and again. We just keep going in circles. So I guess in answer to that question, you can't be a little pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. You can't be a little pregnant. So you have to go in fearless. And what I mean by that is not like gangbusters, but showing people that this is about kids, enough with the adults in the room. And I think that's what people don't get. You know, when I write some of my articles, many people, and I thank you out there, many people compliment it, they like it, they feel connected to it. But there are people who will say, oh, I don't like the bashing. You know, it's too strong. Why do we have to do that? And so my answer to that is, this is not about the adults in the room. If we're putting kids first, and we really mean we're putting kids first, then I'm sorry if this is strong, but you know, you have to look at the victims here. The victims are the kids. I don't worry about hurting feelings if you want to hold on to something that doesn't work. And just to wind up that question, I want to bring up Ashley Sullivan Roberts, one of the founders of Dyslexia Initiative, because she recently wrote an article that I thought was great. And the article was, she writes a lot of things that I think are super, but this one was, I can't make you happy.
Yeah.
I can't make you happy. I'm sorry, I will make some people happy and others I won't make happy, but that's okay. So I think that's pretty much why I did this. I think that we have to get that message out there, and parents have to know the truth Otherwise, they can't advocate for their children the way they should, because they keep trusting that the school is telling them, we're going to take this into account. Yes, we'll do this. And they get the runaround for years. And I see the kids who suffer with anxiety, depression, their parents who cry, suffering for them. Somebody has to be their voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting too, because there's certain cliches that over the years I've noticed with parents that I've talked to, and sometimes they're things that years ago I found myself saying at that point where you suddenly realize what needs to take place and you can't get that, and you can't, and suddenly you're in the trenches of battle. And I remember saying all myths are off, and I remember meeting over the years, that's one of those phrases that always strikes me, how many parents I meet that get to the point, all myths are off. And these are people who, are collaborative and, start out trusting. And eventually you do get to the point that you realize that the instruction or interventions and that the path isn't working. And I mean, quite honestly, everybody's angry. I mean, how can you not, when you expect the education system to teach your child, to read, and years are going by, and the more you know, the more you can get. So, I read that article that Ashley wrote as well, and it was, it was excellent. And I think that's, it's an important point is, you do have to eventually pick a side.
Yeah, and my feeling is you don't have to go in rude or yelling or cursing, but you go in there with knowledge. And that's why I wrote my books. You mentioned my books, and thank you. I wrote the books to be able to give parents the language in a very simple, practical way, so that they could go in and feel confident. And they could also see the difference between what quality instruction should look like and what this other stuff looks like, right? Because otherwise they don't know what they're looking at. But now with COVID and lots of things being online, I have had so many parents write me private messages, or parents I work with telling me that now I see what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so they've become more aware about what the instruction should look like. And they're seeing there's a huge difference. So my books are about giving parents the language, the understanding, and the ability to recognize this so that they can go in and advocate instead of just demanding something. There were parents I hear that they'll say, oh, I want Orton Gillingham. Some of them don't even know what that means. They just hear sound bites. I want OG. I want Wilson. Great. Do you know what you're asking for? Do you know what that's supposed to look like? Do you know what's involved in that? Do you understand that it takes lots of practice and being able to give corrective feedback? There are different components that you should know how to evaluate informally to see if your child is getting what he or she should get.
Well, I mean, that is one of the wonderful things about your book, is that you do make that clear with the programs, because that's something that I'm sure I experienced it, and that I see all the time with parents too, is that somebody recommends that they do need this program. And I saw this recently in a group I was involved with Linda Mood Bell. And, so the parent thought, well, this is what I need. I need Linda Mood Bell. And I'm sure Linda Mood Bell would be very effective. But, I was trying to point out there are other programs, and it's not necessarily about the program. It's about who's implementing it and the fidelity. But, when you're early on and you're trying to just quickly get on the right path of how do you know these things? It's just, a lot, people aren't prepared to suddenly, so we talk about being literacy specialists, forget about even literacy specialists, the amount of terminology and the complexity of the navigation when your kids are when you realize your kids aren't learning to read like their peers, it really is, it's always been a complex environment. We talked about it a few weeks ago, and reading your books that is a way to clarify it. I think it does really, or it does make it very simple that this is the approach that all these programs take, and this is what these are what some of the missing pieces are in instruction. But yeah, that's so common with I need OG, or I need whatever it was, Barton, or whatever somebody recommends.
Yeah, I mean, I tell parents all the time, and I even did a presentation on this. It's not the program, it's the process.
Yeah.
If you don't understand the process, forget it. Doesn't matter. You put a program into someone's hands and that person really doesn't get it, it takes all the evidence away. It's only an evidence-based program if it's implemented the way it was designed to be done. So I think that's an important point you bring up, and you're right. Of course, parents would not know this. Why would they? They don't have to become literacy specialists to be able to be involved in the conversation. But you know what? You have to kind of do your homework a bit. You don't have to be a literacy specialist, but otherwise you're going to get pushed through a system, and your child will get pushed through a system from year to year, and you're always going to be swatting flies. So I put up a few of my blogs today, older blogs, and one of them was about questions that parents should ask. And I did this, of course, because this is how my mind works. I'm like always thinking of tying things together. So it happened to be Passover. And so, of course, I thought of the 4 questions. So I said, okay, that's going to be my blog, questions, important questions that should be answered. And one of the things I put in was how we go wrong. And the way as educators we usually operate is we're always swatting flies that are around the excrement, right? So one fly at a time, swatting, but the excrement is still there. If we want to get rid of the flies, remove the excrement, right? So, I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. Take away what doesn't work. Don't keep adding intervention upon intervention on to something that is not good to begin with.
Well, this is a good lead in to the next question. The next question I have, which is a little bit more insight into then, the purpose of the federal reading initiative, what it was trying to accomplish, and what happened there. And I'm not sure everybody knows what that is.
So you're talking about Reading First?
Yes.
Is that it? Okay.
Yes.
So I was a regional reading coach for an initiative called Reading First. And this came out right around the time of No Child Left Behind, the No Child Left Behind Act. The whole idea was that we want to get kids reading by grade 3. So it was a kindergarten to 3rd grade initiative that was designed to support low-performing school districts by providing money for them for professional development, materials, programming, assessment, progress monitoring, and coaching. And that's what I did. So schools that were able to apply for the grant, and it was a competitive grant. So there were many school districts that fell into the category of these schools that needed improvement. But, you know, it really depended on your grant writer. So the people who obtained the grant had really good grant writers. We should know about that, right? So how important grant writing is. So, so if these districts had a really good grant writer, they would get the grant. And then people like me would go in to these districts and bring the science of reading to the districts. So every month I would go up to Albany, and I was learning from some of the best, you know, Fletcher and Torgerson and Louisa Moats. Reading First had the best of the best involved. There was a lot of money involved in it, and we had excellent training. Now, before I became a coach, I already was on this path. And I mentioned this in my book, so I'm not going to go into it now. But I was already learning about the science of reading. And I was working in schools. And then when I became a coach, it was like, I felt like I was in my own field of dreams. You know, like just, oh my goodness, this is so wonderful. I have all these brilliant people. I'm learning from the best. And then we would go into the school districts, and those districts had their own building coaches, which were people who were already in the district usually, and they had applied in-house. So they had reading teachers becoming building coaches. And so it was kind of turnkey. It was train the trainer. So I would bring the information from Albany, because I am a New Yorker, but this happened in all the states. And then I would work with the building coaches and bring this information right into classrooms. And I would train the coaches. I did in-classroom training where we did co-teach model. And we thought at the time that that would be it. The science would, you know, be in the schools. We really thought, maybe I was naive, but if you told me that I would be sitting here in 2020 having this conversation with you, I would not have believed it. Okay. So at the time I was 15 years younger. So I was naive. So now I speak from experience that, you know, it didn't go as well as we hoped in terms of turning things around.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, in the article that you wrote, you describe how many teachers in the title school districts felt that the new approach to reading instruction was punitive.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of surprised that I had never had any idea that any of this, I never knew anything about that perspective. Could you explain?
Sure. So these are Title I school districts. So we're talking about school districts where people, you know, residents live below the poverty line, right? So Title I, you get funding. So basically, the grant, in order to be able to even apply and think that you could get this grant, you had to be in that category of Title I, right? So it had to be school districts that were low performing. They had a certain number of, you know, English language learners in it. They had to meet. Oh, they had free and reduced lunch, I suppose. All the things that qualify you to be in a district that lives below the poverty line. So the teachers who taught in these districts, all of a sudden, No Child Left Behind, they were being told, you either have to shape up or you're out. And that meant principals, that meant that half the staff could be fired. These were school districts that were on the bad list, all right? And it was done poorly in that regard, because it did make people feel like, I must really be a bad teacher. So, and that wasn't it at all. Yeah. Wasn't that they were bad teachers. The whole idea of the grant was, we wanted kids to read by grade 3. This is not about you being a bad teacher. It's about that these are school districts where their parents couldn't easily go out and get tutoring or get a dyslexia classification, right? They had to start turning around their instruction. And so that was what they were charged to do. The National Reading Panel report came out, and that was 20 years ago. And then we had to take the recommendations and try to make it a reality in the school districts by helping them with the program, the core instruction, their intervention, and give them that type of support. So you said, so why did it seem punitive? Well, these teachers went back to their home districts and they weren't doing this there. They were still doing guided reading, the balanced literacy stuff, picking leveled books from A to Z. So they felt, well, they could still do what they want. Why do I have to start learning something different? So it became this feeling that this was a booby prize. So that's, I guess, the best way to explain it, that, they weren't welcoming this with open arms.
Yes, that makes sense. So is that why so many compromises were made that, as you say, diluted the approach?
Partly, yeah. So part of it was that the universities were still teaching this way and still do. So again, nothing has changed, right? So, you have to look at it holistically. Here we're going in talking about the science of reading, or we called it then, it wasn't called the science of reading. There, these terms change, but it's basically the same thing. It was called scientifically based reading research, SBRR. So we're bringing SBRR in, and yet teachers, to become teachers, were taking their examinations to be licensed, and on their tests, it's telling you to do things that are opposite of what we're telling them. So it's the teacher examinations. It's the universities that were still teaching this way and still do. It's the publishing companies that continued to still put out this type of thing. It's, it was everything that pointed to this being something different for those kids. You understand? It separated people like you from the haves and the have-nots. If you were in that category where you were in a high-performing district, those teachers could do anything they wanted. They didn't have to change. Even though it was said, oh, we want everybody now, all kids reading by grade 3, but nobody was checking. Nobody was demanding that you have to change, right? And then you have people who are being told, well, if you don't do this and your kids don't improve, you're losing your job. So you could see how uncomfortable this could be.
Mm-hmm. And this is what led to that perception of systematic explicit instruction for underperforming schools.
Correct, correct. So it became, so the science was there, but nobody was saying, you know, this is for all kids. It became something that only certain schools needed to do, even though the overall message, of course, from researchers and from the people who studied this is that all kids should get this. But because there's so much pressure from special interest groups and, of course, the big three, you know, they wanted to keep this going. And as a matter of fact, during the Reading First era, there was something that came up about using programs, because they were told, these school districts were told, no, you can't use TC reading and writing. No, you can't use a guided reading leveled literacy framework. They were told you can't do that. So then, you know, Calkins and friends pretty much said, oh, this is like a lawsuit, right? Like, you know, you're favoring certain programs over others, right? And that's what the Balanced Literacy group kind of did. Oh no, this Reading First, it's all about money. So they turned it around where it was about the science of reading people making the money. And so this became contentious, right? The reading wars. And so, you know, they were charged with saying, oh, you know what, this is something that could be a problem. So as you said, many of the people in there, administrators who did study Teachers College, reading and writing, they went to Columbia University, they graduated from there. That's, you know, their alma mater. They felt very differently about this. So they wanted to make teachers feel a little bit better. They wanted to feel better too. So they took this money, but at the same time, they weren't really getting rid of leveled books. We still had book rooms in every school with leveled books. We still had, you know, guided reading going on. And as I said in the article, there were people trying to still blend the two to make this work.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, do you think the leveled readers, in attempts to bridge contradictory reading philosophies, made reading instruction even more problematic than before Reading First was initiated?
Oh, this was going on for so long. I mean, look, I started my college education in the 80s, and I started to teach in the 80s. That's when whole language, that was the term they used then, whole language was big. And basically, they weren't even going to touch phonics at all. So that was something that was antiquated. We don't do anything with phonics. Everything was about authentic books and portfolios, and having a language experience approach where we take everything from the kids. And there was nothing that was systematic or structured. So this has been going on for a very long time, way before Reading First. So, and like I said, Reading First, that was figure 2001.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I have my last question. It's a long one, but here we go. You state that the failure of Reading First was the human component and unwillingness of people to accept change, even if it benefits all children. Cultural incompatibility is a major barrier to strategy in business, and cultural transformation takes years. We have been talking about a cultural transformation all month, and you have been working towards change for years. Have we finally started to burn the boat, and how will we know when the debris has truly floated away?
Okay, all right, so And you're right, it is a long one, but we'll break it up.
We'll break it up.
We'll break it up. So first, there are, like I said, teachers who definitely know about the science, and many of them welcome it, for sure. There are so many teachers out there who welcome the science. But we can't ignore the fact that there are professionals out there who want to just close their eyes to this. And then there are some who just can't even recognize when there is a true reading problem. So I actually pulled up something that was on my page a while ago. There was a teacher who was from the middle and high school level, and she was an English teacher. And I saved this because I always go back to certain things that trigger something. And she said, "My room is magical. I need no other evidence, truly." And what she meant by that was a response that she thought all of this had to do with the little kids, K to 3, when you talk about decoding, like being able to read words, being able to break up words and understand how to read words. Because in her mind, her kids didn't have that problem. She even said, for older kids, I've seen it, but rarely. Less than 3%, if even that high. Right. Now, this is an English teacher, and she clearly doesn't know what she's looking at because she was trained in a certain way. And if she looked at the spelling, if she looked at just some of the mistakes and had them read out loud, she would know that there would be many, many more kids that she's not even aware of. But these were some of her comments. She said that the biggest obstacle is the hatred for reading, and that her room was magical, and that she said that she says that there's not enough close reading going on, and that I would agree with her. But she said that that she spends the first 2 weeks of class talking about books and doing a book speed dating. And she said, and the results are magical. Choice is the heart of literacy. So for her, everything was about choice and conferencing. And that was at the middle and high school level. So here's my answer to that. If you think that's going to change overnight, no way. No way. You have people, and this was someone who was following my page and just could not even, talking to her about things to look for. She just completely shut down. She removed herself from my page because she thought this doesn't go with me. And that's fine. It wasn't for her. But my point is that there are going to be people who know the research, they're on Facebook groups, and they still will continue to do what they're going to do. That's number one. Number two, it's going to take so long to get universities to change completely, right? So it's a process, and then you have tenured professors there, and their careers are all built on this, on faulty strategies. And, so they're not easily giving up because this is, their egos, their identities are at stake here. So that will take time. It's going to take time for every state to get on board and to change teacher licensing exams to match the science of reading. And then you have school districts where they have parents going in and talking about dyslexia. And then, they have people like me talking about dyslexia. They take the information, but then they still continue to do what they do. And, everything moves at a snail's pace. And then, recently, Lucy handed me this on a silver platter, Lucy Hawkins. It was like a gift for the month. That's how I look at this. Because, like I said, I wrote this article months ago. The last few months, she gave me so many great blogs because you can't make this stuff up. You really can't make it up. This back and forth between, yes, we are going to do the phonics units of study, then her latest open letter where she basically said the truth, that it's only going to be a 2% change, 98% of it will stay the same. And then teachers will say that I bash Lucy. Hello? I mean, do you understand what's going on here? Do you realize that you're protecting the person who is continuing all, this nonsense? Come on. And so this isn't about hurting her feelings. It's about protecting kids. It's about giving families resources. And that's what Teach My Kid to Read is about. Because we know that going through the front door might happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. And yes, at this point in time, things seem promising. But if you think that this is going to happen, your kids will be married by then, by the time that this turns around. So my feeling is that you and I need to provide a service for parents, for families, for people to get information and get the truth so that they could go to a library and have resources. Your whole Road to Decode that we're working on together, that there are decodable books in the libraries, that teachers could go to a library and get them when they need them, even if their schools aren't so quick to order them. That there could be tutoring for people who cannot afford to get private tutors, right? That we could hopefully get some funding where we could provide this help to families, and it doesn't have to be Orton Gillingham. This is the misconception. Mm-hmm. There are simple ways to approach this from the start. It becomes more complicated as kids get older. That's why I wrote If Only I Would Have Known, because this is what parents would say to me in those words once they know the truth. We want to get the truth out to preschool parents, people who have little kids so they know right from the start what to look for. Engaging pediatricians, engaging daycare workers, preschool workers, putting this in churches, hopefully, synagogues, anywhere where people go, community centers, where they could get some help and not have to feel they have to mortgage their homes.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. As all these, over time, as we've been having these discussions and starting to roll out our plans so that we could at least, start to communicate to, through the libraries or through community partners, what everybody needs to know about reading and of course, where the resources fit. And, when children get to the point where they're starting to learn to work on phonics, that they have the decodables. And, one of the books I have on my lap is, believe it or not, a book from 2002 from when I did my MBA, because maybe it's just how I think. I'm constantly thinking, like, why can't this culture change? And of course, I know we've just discussed it. You've spent 45 minutes explaining it very, very clearly. And we've all experienced what's gone on from the higher education perspective, the licensure, but it's still, there's, it really is, it really is startling that it's such a difficult culture to make change. But on the other hand, what is encouraging, and I was thinking about this today because we're working on our presentation for, for IDA, is that we always wanted to reach parents and to start to get the message out and to make it ubiquitous what everybody needs to know about literacy, like the ABC song. And we decided that we would initiate even before we had an entire plan. And for me, like, I'm the type of person who, before I, move forward, and you could probably tell, and I always seem to be with somebody like you who's a little bit more risky than me. Well, let's just do it. Let's just go, but I haven't built it. We don't have the computer systems, but we just went out, and today it's kind of funny, this poor little not a little library, but I went out to Troy, New York, and you went out to your library, and we just started talking to them, and we were creating handouts on decodable books. But it was, it started out as an experiment. Let's see what the libraries think. And it wasn't completely smooth sailing. We had a couple of bumps, especially around here, where they were like, wait a minute, these are not books that libraries should carry. And, not every library was open, but by and large, once we had the conversation, they were our culture. The cultural transformation fit in the libraries. And, the libraries started talking sometimes to their elementary schools and their high schools. And we opened up the program this year to school librarians. And, what's kind of fascinating about what we did last year is that, it was an incredible experiment. We got some data. It was great. And we started getting our arms around it and really planning for this year. Then the pandemic happened, and we said, oh my gosh, all of our plans changed, all of our funding changed. But we knew that what we were doing was even more relevant, because now parents are in a hybrid model, more parents are homeschooling. And it was the encouragement from a couple of the libraries that we worked with that made us realize, we have to keep going. We have to keep going now more than ever. And, this year it really has been, it really has been amazing to see the program grow through some of the libraries. I mean, yesterday I was blown away by the library that we worked with in Minneapolis that now has a collection called The Road to Decode. So, it's slow going, and I'm looking forward to, for us to get our presentation out and to talk more about our programming, because we're early on, and there's, there's fidelity on our own program of another reason why we need funding, so we can build out courses, so that we can make sure that everybody who wants to be part of this can get access to the right information, so they have context to what they're doing, and we can better. I'm big, as you know, lately I'm all about onboarding, because I've spent the last few months spending once or twice a week sending these emails out, and you get them to the librarians and the volunteers, and it's communication.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. It's very hard, and but I do think that you're doing it. Yes, we're doing it, but that part is you, getting that message out and staying on top of those things. But you're right, I am more about let's do it now, because I have that sense of urgency.
Yes.
And so that's what drives me. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think that people are forgiving. I really do. What they cannot forgive is looking the other way. They can't, when you know something, you have to say something. And so my feeling is, I'd rather do it and then work with it rather than not do it at all. Let's just do it, get it done. My illustrator, Cheryl, out there, if she's watching, she'll probably laugh, because she is a perfectionist. Every little thing has to be perfect. And I'm like, it looks good. Let's just do it. Come on. And she's like, you are, she can't keep up with me. Like, let's go, let's go. But I feel the need to do it. And look, you listened to Hildebrand yesterday.
Yeah.
What did he say? He said about being on board with parents for the good or the bad. And yes, he said, I don't like using the word bad. There are challenges, right? There are challenges, but he's in it, right? I'm in it. You're in it. You have to be in it to win it. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect right now. So we're working the kinks out, but I think parents want this, and I think they're excited about it. I think both you and I are talking to people, and they feel a need for this, to have a resource center. And what better place than the library? So I think it's going to just take off. It's just a matter of time, because clearly with 65% of the kids not reading on grade level proficiency, if the schools have not fixed this with billions of dollars, billions, over 20 years, it's not happening so fast through the schools. So in the meantime, that's what we are going to do. We're going to at least enlighten people, give them the information that they deserve.
Yeah, and I mean, I do hope people that they visit our website and learn more about the program, because there's, there's a richness to it. There's so many pieces of it. And, again, I'm putting together a presentation, even the access to decodable books. Once libraries want to order, I mean, we deal with libraries with lots of different budgets to no budgets, and these partnerships that we've created with the small decodable book publishers and the organizations, in the, the donations we sometimes have to get from books to put together collections for them. And that's something that, we're going to have to work on more over the next couple of months, is make it easier for the libraries that just don't have the means to get these books, to get these sample sets, and start to educate the community about what they are, how to use them. In some cases there are the free ebooks, and you and I have worked on lots of different solutions, but we are getting the word out in the community in a way that it's spreading, and people with young children are able to work with their kids, and they often understand, because they want their kids are starting to learn to read. They want them to have practice, and they're starting to see that there's some discrepancies in what they're being guided to do. And families that are struggling, like you said, there's other options that we've talked about, but education is slow to change. And one thing that I know we have done, we have just, we've gotten started. And of course there are kinks. It's, I always say the clunky computer system, all the technology issues that we have, but we have come up with a strategy, and we've tested it, and we started it in New York, and now we have libraries in Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan. And sometimes we have libraries we don't know about, because we're all online, and I don't even realize that somebody is still with us, and they send me a photo or contact me, or there's a volunteer, she's not on Facebook, who's been calling libraries all over DC and Virginia, because she's with a group of parents and they want to teach their kids to read, and they've learned about our books, and they've learned about the process of how we learn to read and some of the pre-reading activities, and they want to have access to these resources. And I'm going to jump in with the infamous Barbara Maradara soon, and if she's watching,
Hi, Barbara.
to try
Hi,
to
Nora. All these people who have really, I just have to thank them. Denora,
Yes.
Barbara. There are so many out there. Meg.
yeah.
Who else? I don't know. I'm sure I'm missing names, and I don't mean to. It's just hard to think on the spot.
Yes.
But there are so many people rooting for us and doing the work, the really in the trenches work that we so much appreciate you. And it's going to work because, you mentioned parents. Parents know when there is a problem early on. And then, when they look back and they see, I felt that way when my kid was 3 years old, 4 years old. They know. they're very aware, they're attuned to this, but they don't have the language for it. And they, they're trusting the professionals. And so I think going through the back door in this way, rather than the front door in a school building, is going to be a great support to communities across the country and hopefully in other parts of the world too, because we speak to a lot of people, from the UK, Canada, Australia, Northern Ireland, that, something like this model might work elsewhere.
I think so. I mean, I'm excited, and this is, and I do see there's a couple of questions, but I think we could probably check the comment boxes over the next,
Sure.
next day if anything comes up, because these questions are a little bit in the weeds. But to get back to what you were. I think we're concluding here is this has just been an incredible month. And for us, part of the reason that we had all of these presentations this month is when we did pivot and go online, part of our mission is to get foundational information out to the most amount of people, provide some context, even the Dyslexia 101, different perspectives, and then some of the breadth of the organizations, the resources available. And this week we wrapped up with outcomes. And the reason we streamed out to Facebook, and that, this was a giant experiment, is because we wanted to be able to record our presentations so we would have them, but we wanted to reach the most amount of people. And we talked about, should we just have Zoom webinars, have people come into Zoom? Should we go out to YouTube? And we chose Facebook because we thought that for this month, for October, we would reach the most amount of people. And that's what we're trying to do with our mission. And it's been really encouraging to be able to do this and to get feedback. And I think we've even gotten to know some new people that have been attending a lot of these presentations. And it's just been incredible. And the other thanks that I need to make is the people we work with. We work hand in glove with these organizations and with these publishers. And I think that's one of the unique things about our program is, we're not sales reps. We're not going in and selling whole phonics or phonic books. We're educating librarians, and we're helping them, develop literacy program and setting up decodable book sections. But we offer a service by helping them understand the different fits of these books we work with. And the only way that we can do that is by working really, really closely with all of these partners. And in some cases, I have to send some of the publications or resources to you because I say, I can't talk about them yet because I get it, but not well enough yet. And, when we start onboarding a little more professionally or a little bit, beyond what we're doing now with the volunteers, that's, part of what we need to do too, is make sure everybody has that level of information of the different fits. And we get that from this back and forth with them. And it's really cool.
Nice, it is. And I agree with you. The publishers have been wonderful and lots of great people out there. But I think at this point, my last words is go to your website, go to your Facebook page, Teach My Kid to Read, learn about what we're doing, get involved. We need support, we need you. And it was a pleasure to do this. It really was my pleasure. And, my whole goal is to make a difference. So that's what I hope we're doing. And I'm confident that we are.
I think so. I think so too.
All right.
Yes. So visit our website, and we'll still have a few more virtual events, not nearly at this pace because we've got work to do.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So thank you. And thank you so much for also talking about my books too, because I do appreciate that. And I hope people will take a look at them.
I think they will.
Okay, thank you.
Good night, everybody.
All right, bye.